Yo, what's up? My name is Sven, and today we're gonna talk about everything you need to know to get the best possible performance in Rust. This video will be split into two parts, where in part 1 we'll go over the internal Rust settings, and in part 2 we'll go over anything that's outside of the game that you should know about, you should do, and you shouldn't do. Alright, so before we jump into part 1, there's a couple of things I'd like to mention. First of all is that this video is purely made out of my own experience and expertise. There might be things that I do not feature or cover up in this video. Next to that, I want to address that the performance you get in Rust is very dependent on the hardware that you have. We will talk about that, although each and every one of you will have a different computer and so will probably get different results. Alright, with that said, let's jump into part 1 and let's talk about the Rust settings internally. Alright, now with Rust started, we can open up the Options tab. Now there's something very important that you should know. When you have the game open and you're inside a server, changing the options can actually force your game to crash, etc. I do not recommend to change any options while you are in game. Alright, so when you open up the options, you'll see first tab inside options is options. And there's a few things here that are important to know. Your field of view is very preference based. The higher you have it, the bigger your field of view is and the more you'll see. But it doesn't really affect what's rendered and what not. And so it doesn't really affect your performance. For censorship, funny enough, and you could say that nudity does increase your performance. Although I do know that if you have underwear on, there's basically less amount of polys and vertices having to be rendered for the character. And so technically it would actually increase your performance by using underwear. Height size doesn't really matter. It's purely more of the loading time when you're loading in that affects this. Turning on or off doesn't really affect your performance. Now for physics, obviously you want to have max gips turned to 0. And as it says here on the option, maximum amount of gips broken objects that can exist at one time. Now, the more that can exist, the more that has to load, the worse your performance is. So obviously you want to have it on 0. Alright, so now we're talking about user interface skill, and I just want to say that it's probably best to have it on 1. Now these things here are purely option based. Turning them off is less tough to load, so technically should increase your performance, although again they play such a tiny role in your overall performance that it doesn't matter. For audio, we can basically completely ignore that as it doesn't affect your performance. And then we go over to the screen tab. And the screen tab is actually a very interesting point. Now, what you want to do here is a few things. You want to make sure your FPS limit is on 240, aka max. The VSync you want to have off. Now, if you know what VSync is and you like it, I would recommend it. Although on default, I think VSync in Rust is 60 FPS. So not worth it for me at least, as I'm usually above 100 FPS. So I have it off, but if you like to use it, turn it on. Now, there's two more things here that are actually very important. The first one is the resolution. And this is very important, and for those of you out there that play on stretched, completely ignore this. For those of you out there that play on borderless and play on a native resolution from Windows, consider doing this. My Windows is on 4040p, so my Windows resolution is a bit higher than the Rust is rendered in, and I like to have it on 1920 by 1080 because I think 1080p is fine for me. Changing resolution actually is the most beneficial thing you can do if you're struggling with performance. For mode, we are using borderless, and there's 3 modes here. There's exclusive, there's borderless, and there's windowed. Now windowed, don't touch, is the worst performance. You don't want to have this at all at any moment, pretty much. Can't really say anything else about it. Borderless is really nice, although it doesn't give you maximum performance. Now what borderless does, and what the difference is between exclusive and borderless. Exclusive is basically full screen, and borderless is full screen without it being full screen. It allows you to be able to alt-tab straight in and out of the game. Although borderless does affect your FPS, and so if you want to have the most FPS, you want to make sure you're on full screen and on exclusive mode. Now we're going to talk about the most advanced tab in the whole Rust settings, and the most important one as well, graphics settings. Graphics are very performance based, and they're very preference based as well. It's about what you like and how you want your game to look. There's a couple of things that you should know and that you shouldn't do, although overall the idea what you want here is you want to basically turn everything down, open up the game, see how it looks, and if something is bothering you that you actually want to look better specifically, you're going to try and tweak that up. It it doesn't matter if you put everything down, it won't necessarily give you the highest FPS. And we'll get to that into each setting individually why. Graphics quality for me on 2 is fine enough, although this is one I tweak a lot. Shadow quality I have on 1 because I think it's important to have somewhat of decent shadows, but not insane good looking shadows. Shadow cascades is actually something that speaks for itself. And as you can see what it says on the top, number of distance splits for sun and moon shadows. Now, the higher you put this number, it basically increases the render resolution of your shadows. And so the higher, the worse for your computer, the less FPS. Now, for max shadow lights, water quality, water reflections, and world reflections, I have everything on 0 because for me, barely changes anything and I don't care about this and better for your performance. Shader level, a lot of people will say, hey, put it on max if you want the game to look the best, but I don't know why, but for some reason it removes most of the grass of your game and it will make the game look a lot cleaner. Now, draw distance is basically the distance in what objects in the game are rendered. And so the higher you put that, the more is loaded, the less FPS you'll have. So you want to make sure that's the lowest. Although now what you'll see what you see people do is tweak this around. Now shadow distance I have on 239 because once again, I want to have some kind of decent shadows. Anisotropic filtering is actually very, very important, but the higher you put that, the more performance impact. I have it on 2. I think that's for me the sweet spot. Parallax mapping is completely turned off. I would not recommend to use that. Grass displacement off. So for mesh quality, I have particle quality on 18 because I don't care so much about particles. Now I don't want the game to look like absolute ass either, so I have it on 18 and not on 0. But I tweak this around every now and then, put it lower if I notice problems. Object quality is for me somewhat important, and that's how you should see the entire mesh quality setting here. Now you basically want to put up what's important for you until the point where it's really important. And the best way to find the sweet spot for me was by opening the game and by joining a server and just put everything on 0 or on max. You can do it the other way around as well. And you want to basically, hey, I'm looking at a tree and it looks like ass. Let's put it up. Ah, it still looks like ass. Put it up. Oh, okay. Now it looks pretty good. If that's the sweet spot for you, don't put it higher because every point you put it higher is a more performance impact. The last 2 parts, experimental, you just want to have everything off. And the last part is image effects. And here I would recommend to turn everything off as well because you don't really need any of this, basically. Simple as that. And your anti-aliasing is actually a very important thing. Now, what does anti-aliasing do? It sharpens your game. This setting is more like, how do you want the game to look? Some people care about having sharpen on and anti-aliasing off or on FXAA, but I care more about having the game look a bit smoother, and that's why I have it on SMAA, and I think the S even stands for smoothing. And yeah, that's basically it. That's the options in the game. There's nothing really else that you should know here. That's basically it. Another final thing, as you can see, I'm loading up my inventory. Don't load your inventory while you're in the game. Don't load it beforehand either, especially if you have a lot of skins like me. It will fuck your game up. Don't load it. Don't ever load it. And if you load it, quit your game and turn it back on. When it comes to Steam, there's a couple of things you should consider doing. On the properties of Rust, it cannot harm to verify your game integrity every now and then. Next to that, you always want to make sure that on the betas tab, you have the beta output set on none. Another thing that you can consider doing is by turning off the Steam overlay for this game. I can't 100% prove how much this affects the performance of the game, although I do know that it partially does. The impact the Steam overlay has on your performance is very dependent on the computer that you have, and so I can't really 100% say exactly how much this will improve things. Alright, next up, we're gonna do another thing on Steam, and we're gonna talk about the Steam launch options. You can access them for each game under properties, and you'll see here a button under the general tab called Set Launch Options. So the easiest way to get the proper launch options for Rust is by creating a new text document on your desktop temporarily. You can name this whatever. I'm just gonna call it test. You open that and you paste the code that is in my description in here. Now for each minus point here, it's basically a feature where we force the system, Windows, to set something. As you can see, there's a couple of X's. Alright, so there's basically 3 X's here that we have to fill out. Now we'll go over how to find each X individually. The first one is super simple. You start the task manager and you go to the performance tab and you click on your memory. Now on your memory on the top right, you'll see, in my case, I have 64 gig memory. Now, what you want to do here is on max memory, you don't want to put 64. You want to put the amount of megabyte. So 1 gigabyte equals 1024 megabytes. So in this case, we're going to do 64 times 1024 equals 65,536. So that's what we're going to put here. And make sure you don't copy the comma. Now, the next part is CPU count. CPU count means the amount of cores your CPU has. How you find it is by going back to the task manager, clicking on your CPU tab instead, and then you'll see here under sockets, you'll see cores. In my case, that is 10. So we put 10 on CPU count. Now for exThreads, the amount of logical processors your CPU has, basically the next value here. Logical processors 20. Now, this is very technical, why, and I don't want to get into that, although that's basically what you want to do. Now, the launch parameter is ready. So what you do is you select everything, you can do Ctrl A, and then you copy it with Ctrl C, or you right click copy. You go back to Steam, you right click on Rust, properties, and you set launch options under the general tab, and you paste the settings in. You press OK, you click close, and we're done. That's it. Alright, so next off, we're going to talk about the power plan of your Windows. This is a very important step. You can access your power settings by opening the start menu of your Windows and typing edit power plan. You click on it and this will open, and you can go back one subcategory into power options, and you'll see here there should be three options: balanced, recommended, high performance, power saver. But I'm going to show you guys how to unlock the ultimate performance feature. So all you have to do, you open start again, you type CMD, and you right click on it and you open it as administrator. Now you paste the code that I've just put it in the description of the video as well. Now if we reopen the power options, you'll see there's a new power option called Ultimate Performance. This is the one that you want to select, and that's basically it. You select it, you close this, and it's done. Next off, let's talk about overlays. And let's start with the Discord overlay first, as it's the most commonly used by you guys. On default, the Discord overlay is enabled. Now this does really affect your performance, especially in Rust. So you want to make sure it's disabled. How to disable it? You open your Discord and you click on the bottom left on the settings, user settings, and you go to the overlay tab, as you can see here. Now you want to make sure that this is disabled, off. That's it. That's basically all you have to do. Now I just want to say here that I do have the NVIDIA overlay through the NVIDIA GeForce Experience. The overlay, it is actually alright to have that on. Now I don't really have any other things that have an overlay, but you want to make sure that anything else than Discord, what we showed, and NVIDIA, make sure to have it disabled, turned off, or uninstalled for your computer. Alright, the next part, let's talk a little bit about antiviruses and programs such as CC Cleaner or Malwarebytes, etc. Don't use them. Alright, so the last and final tip, and something that's very obvious for me, but I just want to make sure it's covered in this video, is the fact that you always want to make sure there's the least amount of programs running on your computer that you don't need. Obviously, if you have a lot of programs running and on, even programs such as Google Chrome, do affect directly your game's performance, and you want to make sure they're turned off, disabled, uninstalled when not needed, etc. Oh yeah, another thing as well, make sure that you keep your NVIDIA drivers and other computer related drivers up to date. Always better to have them updated than not to. Alright, that was it for this one. Now as a final note, I would just like to remind all of you that there is no such thing as a program that will increase your FPS. There's no such thing as a program that will increase your amount of RAM. Don't fall for it. Don't install any of that. Anything you install extra on your computer is gonna have a performance impact for the games that you're playing. Either way, if you think that this video was useful, please let me know in the comments and leave a like. And if you want to see more of this or more of my content in and around Rust, please follow me and subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you all in the next video. Take care.